Finral is one of the most versatile supporters in the game, and today we are going to be talking about how you guys should be building this character, specifically what skills you want to be upgrading first, what skill cards you want to equip to him, what gear you want to put on Finral, whether or not you should actually enhance him all the way or not, what talents you want to run on him, and then of course what teams he is going to work well on for PvP and PvE. So starting off with his skills, let's take a look at his passive. His passive is actually really nice. It grants a 10% reduced unfavored damage taken. This is the enhanced passive, right? So you do have to dupe him out to get that, but it's very, very nice because it's going to give him more survivability in both PvP and PvE, and that is not to be overlooked. Like, that is actually pretty decent. 10% reduced unfavored damage taken is insanely good. And then for his skill 1, it is called Spatial Magic Bullet. It is a single target skill. It grants an increased speed level 2 buff to 2 allies with the lowest mobility for 2 turns. That is honestly not bad, giving your allies speed for just using this skill. Okay, that's pretty decent. It doesn't do the most damage, but it is okay. That is his like only attack skill, so keep that in mind. And then for skill 2, this is an AoE for your team. It grants all allies an increased attack level 2 buff for 2 turns. So that increases your attack of all allies by 55%. And then if a designated ally is buffed with increased crit rate, whether Finral gave them increased crit or they gave it to themselves or they got it from another character, it does not matter. But if they have increased crit rate, it grants them a 10% increased damage dealt buff for 2 turns. Now, if you upgrade this skill down here, it'll increase the amount of damage that ally can do to 30%, which is even better. A 30% increased damage buff from the skill plus a 55% increased attack buff is honestly really solid. Now, the thing I do want to point out is that this right here only grants allies increased attack, not increased magic attack. So characters that are built with magic attack, like Julius, are not going to benefit from this as much as characters like Red Asta, Season 1 Asta, who has all attack, right? He would benefit from this part a lot more. So keep that in mind when it comes to Finral and the teams that you're going to be potentially running him with, okay? And then this last part here comes from a skill card, 60% chance to grant an ally a 15% increased mobility buff. If that was a 100% chance, if like upgrading the skill did that, then this would be really, really good. But still, 60% chance to grant an ally 15% increased mobility is not terrible. And then for his special skill, it is an AoE for your whole team again. It's called Spatial Support. Grants all allies an increased speed level 3 buff for 2 turns, which is good. And so if you don't know the difference between speed and mobility, because like you might be thinking who's better, Valtos or Finral, right? They're both really good characters. You see them run quite a bit, but I think you see Valtos now more days running PvP. Technically, Valtos is better because he gives increased mobility, which means he increases the yellow bar at the bottom of the character screen when you're in battle, okay? And whereas the speed right here that Finral gives increases how fast that yellow bar increases over each turn, okay? So Valtos is technically better because he gives mobility on turn 1, whereas Finral gives speed, which means for the next 2 turns, the mobility gauge of your allies is going to increase faster over those next 2 turns, okay? So that's what speed does. Difference between speed and mobility. I know it's a little bit confusing. And then 60% chance to remove 1 debuff from an ally. This does become a 100% chance as you upgrade the skill, but it is only 1 ally, so keep that in mind. And then 50% chance to grant an ally an increased crit rate level 3 buff for 2 turns. That increased crit rate is really good. Once again, I wish upgrading the skill gave a guaranteed crit rate, and that would be even better, but this is an SR character, right? So we can't expect too much, but that is fairly decent. And then for his combo skill is actually something that really impresses me. And so it grants the partner mage a increased attack level 4 buff. That's pretty decent, right? That's 84% extra attack. Once again, works better with attack type characters. And then 50% chance to grant a 50% increased mobility buff to the partnered mage. And as you upgrade this skill, it increases the mobility by 5% here, and then at level 4 another 5%, so it becomes a 60% increased mobility. And then at level 3 and level 5 it increases your activation rate to where eventually it becomes 80% activation chance. Okay, so 80% chance to grant a 60% increased mobility buff to the partner mage. That is honestly pretty dang decent. The only thing that would be better is if it was guaranteed, right? And it is only increased mobility to one mage, so it's not all that great. So if you are running Finral like in PvP, you're probably not going to be using this combined attack all that much, because while giving mobility is good, it's not as good as giving the speed technically to everybody, okay? Because this only gives it to one character. And then if you were running Finral with Vanessa, if we ever get a really good SSR Vanessa, right, in the game, then maybe you'll want to use this as opposed to a special, because this is actually really good. So when you run Finral with Vanessa and do the combo skill, it grants all allies a 20% increased mobility buff. That is as good as Valtos, okay, so that's pretty good. And then grants continuous damage immunity to all allies for 2 turns as well, which is good. So it's going to counter the burn and the poison meta and stuff like that are coming. So that is pretty dang decent. The only problem is we don't really have a Vanessa that you're going to want to run in PvP right now, and so far JP and KR also don't really have one, so it might be a while before we actually get to see this combo attack be used, right? So in terms of upgrade priority, just because I can't really use the combo attack with Vanessa yet, and this one only gives mobility to one character, I would say you're not going to upgrade this first. However, in the future, you might want to upgrade it like second or third potentially, just depending on, you know, how the meta changes. But for right now, I would go with upgrades your special skill first, then I would upgrade your skill 2, then I would upgrade your combo skill because it does give you more mobility and more activation rate. And then last but not least, I do your skill 1 because your skill 1 just scales damage and you're never going to do that much damage with Finral, so it's kind of pointless, right? So you'll benefit a lot from the extra debuff removal. It's a 100% chance to remove a debuff, which is nice, by upgrading your special skill first. And then by upgrading your secondary skill, you'll get that increased damage dealt. The only reason I say don't do your secondary skill before you do your special skill is because it only gives that extra damage boost if there is increased crit rate. So like, you're not always going to have increased crit rate on whatever character you're using this on. So you're not always going to get that extra damage, right? But if you plan on running Finral with a crit rate buffer, maybe like Sally or something like that, and you know that your ally is going to have an increased crit rate, then you might want to actually upgrade this skill first, because then you know that you're always going to get that extra damage. And so in terms of PvE, increasing the overall damage that you're going to do, you might want to upgrade skill 2 first. Okay, so let me reiterate all that just a little bit more simply for you. I would do special skill first if you're doing PvP. I would do skill 2 first if you're doing PvE. And then from there, I would do your combo skill next, and then your primary skill last. Okay, so that's kind of upgrade priority for the skills. Now let's talk about the skill cards. So his skill card is pretty good because it gives that 60% chance to grant an ally 15% increased mobility, right? And then additionally, it gives a 50% chance to grant 10% increased mobility upon using skill 2. So that's fairly decent, okay? But I would say there are probably other skill cards you can run, like Valtos' skill card on Finral, and it might work out better. Okay, so Valtos' skill card is called Cultist Retribution, and it applies a 5 to 20%, depending on how much you have the card upgraded, increased stamina. Stamina stands for mobility once again. Increased mobility to yourself upon using a special skill. Okay, so that would work pretty well on Finral. Another option you could run, this would be more of a PvE option for Finral, would be Sally's skill card, Insatiable Quest, and upon using skill 2, applies 10% increased all attack to the ally with the highest attack for 2 turns. Okay, so that's just going to make your skill 2 do even more to buff your ally's damage, right? So that is really, really good. Sally's skill card is genuinely like one of the best support skill cards you can get, and it can be put on pretty much any support character and make them that much better for PvE. Okay, so those are kind of the skill cards you want to run on him. Any supporter skill card will really work okay on Finral, but those are kind of the ones I would prefer to run. And then in terms of gear, what should you be working towards? Well, for an SR character like this, you are going to want to aim for sets. You are not going to worry about the stats specifically, you're not going to worry about attack or magic attack because he has one skill besides his combo attack that does damage, right? So there's no point. There's no point at all in worrying about attack or magic attack other than for his skill 1. So if you're looking to maximize skill 1 damage, right, then you're aiming for magic attack as your main stat. I do have attack gear on him because I'm just not worried about it, right? But keep that in mind. If you're looking to maximize his damage, you're building for magic attack, okay? But the sets you want to go for speed sets. These are probably not necessarily the most ideal sets right here. Ideally, you have a full gold speed set and then maybe like a half defense set or something like that. That would be the most ideal way to build Finral. I'll say that right now. Okay, but what I'm running right here is a full regular speed set. And what this is going to do is it's going to grant a 4% increased speed buff to the wearer for 1 turn at the start of combat. This will help him out in both PvE and PvP. The reason you want to run speed on Finral is so that he goes first in PvP. Also, so in PvE, he goes before your other characters and he can buff them, right? So you want the Traveler set, and if you equip the Traveler's map, the Traveler's journal, the Traveler's hat, and the Traveler's compass all on Finral, you will get this 4 buff right here where you grant a 4% increased speed buff to the wearer. And then for the gold set, right, it has a gold star on it. This is a gold speed set. You're looking for the Secret of the Deep Sea set, and you want to equip Essence of the Deep Sea Pearl, Deep Sea Scale Fragment, or Conch of the Deep Sea. And what this is going to do at 2 of the pieces, it grants the wearer a 5% increased speed buff for 2 turns at the start of a wave. Or if you get the full set, which is what I would recommend doing, get the full set, and you'll get a speed plus 5 buff. That is really good. So I'd recommend getting a full gold set and like a half defense set, and that's probably more optimal for Finral because that gives him more speed and then also gives him more survivability, having a little bit of defense on him. And really quickly, I want to explain what a gold set is and how it differs from the normal set for anyone who's newer. Okay, so if we go over here to grade and go to sets, you can look through different sets. We have your attack set, defense set, HP set, mobility set, so on and so forth, right? And then if you look over here, you have your attack set, defense set, HP set, mobility set all over again, except for they have a gold star, meaning they are technically better gear sets, okay? The reason they're better is because these scale based on higher percentages, right? Grants the wearer a 5% increased speed buff with only 2 pieces, whereas this one, if the wearer is afflicted with a status ailment, grants a 20% increased speed buff for 1 turn, but there's an extra stipulation there that says you have to be afflicted with a status ailment, which is harder to achieve, so you're not going to get that bonus speed like turn 1 typically, okay? So the gold sets are just all around typically better, so you want to aim for the gold sets that give a percentage and a decent amount of like speed or attack or whatever, okay? Now, in terms of enhancing, should you guys be enhancing Finral or not? Well, let's look at his enhancement levels. So at enhancement level 2 here, where you get the enhanced passive, it grants a 5% increased reduced unfavored damage taken, which is good. Okay, but it gets better when you get to level 5 because it becomes 10%, so it's definitely worth enhancing him because it gives him more survivability for PvE and PvP content, right? Both things. And then just getting him to even level 4, you'll see that you'll notice the speed buff went away. So if you go here, he gets an extra 2 speed for getting him to 4 dupes, which is going to make a big difference in PvP if you're going against an unduped Finral while your Finral is duped, because you automatically have a leg up on them because you have more speed. Okay, and then in terms of talents, what do you want to be doing? Well, the attack tree is pretty much completely useless to you, right? Because he has 1 move that does damage. But if you're going to go for anything, go for magic attack, right? Because he scales off magic attack, and then probably crit rate. It's probably what I go for. You could go for magic attack and damage to boss, depending on if you're doing PvE, but like, that's genuinely like go for magic attack, and then you can go for either of these. It doesn't really matter at that point. The rest of the stuff you're not really going to go for on Finral. So yeah, that's the attack tree. Then on the defense tree, you want to go for the flat 20%. Extra defense is always good. It's better than anything else here that this tree offers. And then you want to go for the defense plus 4% and crit resist plus 2% at the start of a wave. And it stacks up to 5 times. Once again, very good for PvE. It's going to help give him more survivability. So that's the defense tree. And then for the support tree, this is actually a tree for Finral and Valtos. I would actually recommend fully getting done every single slot, because if you do get every slot done, then here in this middle slot, you're going to be able to use a talent stone And then with that talent stone, you can add more speed to the character. There is a talent stone that gives +2 speed that you can equip, and that will make your Finral faster than other Finrals, right? So that's a really, really good thing to have. And this is the only part of his talent tree you actually would want to fill out every slot. Now, if you're not going to fill out every slot, which slots should you go for? I would probably recommend Swiftness, that way you can get your ultimate back faster, or I would recommend Mage's Blessing, which gives you a 20% chance to get your skill 2 back faster. Either one is good on Finral, either one will work, and then I would go for Damage Resist as your other option. These other options, Accuracy and Penetration don't matter, HP Recover doesn't matter, and grants debuff immunity upon resisting damage doesn't really matter. So those are kind of your 3 best ones, but once again, I recommend doing all slots and getting the Talent Carved Stone, which is going to give you extra speed and really help Finral out since he is a speed character. Now, in terms of teams that you could be putting Finral on, let's take a look at the potential teams you could be running. So this is a PvE team right here that you can run with Finral. The idea behind this team is you have Finral to buff Raya, you have Sally to buff Raya, and if you don't know anything about Raya, the more buffs he has, the more damage he can do, right? And so Sally can give increased crit rate to Raya, and then we can use Finral's skill 2 for PvE, and then it will give Raya extra damage. And if you upgraded skill 2, like I said before, then that extra damage will be a 30% extra damage buff to Raya, right? So these two in particular work very, very well together for buffing Raya. Now, if you are going to run these two, I almost recommend building Raya with an attack build as opposed to a magic attack build. The normal build for Raya is a magic attack build, but like if you're going to run Finral here specifically, remember he buffs attack more than he buffs magic attack, like I was saying when we were going over his skills. So it'd be better almost to build Raya with attack. And then the only reason Mars is here is like you're going to want some sort of defender that's going to be able to taunt and do status elements like stuns and things like that. So this is a pretty good overall solid PvE team. I would run this team more often in like a boss battle though than I would just general like PvE waves. Okay, so this is an option for PvE. And then for PvP, where I think a lot of people are going to want to use Finral more, I would recommend this build right here if you have a built Raya and a built Licht, because using Valtos and using Finral together in tandem will make sure that your Raya and your Licht are going to go before the enemy team, and if you know how their combo works, you are able to potentially one-shot a whole enemy team before they ever even get a turn. Okay, so this team works out pretty well, and the more meta one that you're going to see right now in PvP at the higher ranks, I feel like the one that I see more often is Valtos and Finral together still. You want to run them together. And then you are going to have Julius and Noelle as your other options, and they're just going to be going so fast that they're going to be able to destroy the whole other team, potentially once again before they even get a turn, right? So the reason, like, you might be asking, why do we run Valtos and Finral together? This goes back to what I was saying before. Valtos increases mobility, so he increases the yellow bar, and then Finral will increase speed. So like after the bar has been increased, it resets right after you use a move. And then so after your mobility is gone, Finral will increase how fast that fills up again, so you get another turn quicker. So they work really well together in PvP. Okay, so those are kind of the PvP teams and the PvE teams I would run for Finral. And that is the end of the build guide. If you guys enjoyed this video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.